Welcome back to High Stakes. Today, we will be discussing the following NCAAF matches that is happening on Friday, September 23rd, 2023. We will be providing our team, total, and prop picks for the day. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. If you want access to our premium picks, you can check out our Patreon page. You can find the link to our Patreon page in the description and comment section below. Rutgers versus Michigan. Take Michigan giving the points. The Wolverines have cruised through their first 3 games, outscoring their opponents 96-16. They opened their Big Ten schedule with their 4th home game of the year, boasting a defense that has allowed just 5.3 points per game, the best mark in the country. They've yielded just 1 touchdown and 222.3 total yards per game, second best in the country. Opponents have earned just 12.3 first downs per game, on average, against Michigan, while converting third downs at just an 18.4% clip. Defensive end Jalen Harrell is tied for second in the Big Ten with 2.5 sacks. On the offensive end, the Wolverines are averaging 402 total yards per game and 7.2 yards per play. Quarterback J. McCarthy has averaged 233.7 yards per game with 7 total touchdowns and 3 interceptions on the year. Roman Wilson has been on the end of 6 of those touchdown passes, tied for most in the country. McCarthy also benefits from a monstrous offensive line that has given up just 1 sack on the season and has opened the rushing game to 156.7 yards per game. The Rutgers-Michigan rivalry, relatively young, saw Rutgers claim victory in their first meeting back in 2014. However, it's been all Michigan since then, with the Wolverines winning 8 straight games in the series. Notably, 5 of those victories have been by a margin of at least 33 points, and in 7 instances, Michigan held the Scarlet Knights to 17 points or fewer. Their dominance in this series is evident, and as the second-ranked team in the country, they appear poised to continue that dominance against Rutgers. It's interesting to note that the Wolverines have an unexpected 0-3 record against the spread, ATS, this season, primarily because they eased off in their first 3 games. On the other hand, Rutgers has gone 3-0 ATS this season but was the favored team in all those games, with none having a spread of more than -7.5. Michigan presents a far more formidable challenge than any opponent Rutgers has faced this season. If teams like Virginia Tech manage to score 16 points against Rutgers, it's reasonable to expect that Michigan's offense can achieve much more. With Harbaugh returning and Michigan entering their first Big Ten game of the season, I believe this matchup could break some of the prevailing trends. Aslo take the over. For the 3rd straight season, the Scarlet Knights have jumped out to a 3-0 record to kick off their season. The defense is allowing just 10 points per game, tied for the 7th best scoring defense in the nation. Last weekend, they bent a little more than in their first 2 games, allowing 314 total yards to Virginia Tech while also allowing them 5 of 15 conversions on 3rd down and 2 of 3 on 4th down. They have 8 sacks on the year and their 5 interceptions are tied for second most in the Big Ten. Defensive backs Shaquan Loyal and Robert Longerbeam have each recorded a sack, picked off a pass, and defended 2 passes. The offense has leaned heavily on the run game, noted largely in last week's 16 pass attempts and 46 total passing yards. Doak Walker Award Kyle Menengai rumbled for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns on 16 carries. His 357 yards on the year are tied for 6th most in the country, and his 5 touchdowns are tied for the 4th most. The junior is averaging 6.2 yards per carry, helping the team average 210.7 rushing yards per game, 20th in the country. When these two get together, the ball gets rolling and the score does as well. The over is 8-1 in the series, and Michigan alone has scored over 44 points in 5 of those games. Last season, the total was 44.5 and they soared past it with 69 combined points. Despite the level of both defenses, this is always one of those matchups where somehow the offenses rise to the occasion. Both sides are obviously very well coached. Weather should not be a factor or slow either side at all. With 6 games between them this year, 5 times these offenses put 30 or more points up. Oklahoma versus Cincinnati. Take Oklahoma to cover. Oklahoma is 3-0 this season, with all 3 of their games ending pretty easily for the number 16 ranked team in the nation. The Sooners won by over 70 points against Arkansas State in their Week 1 game. They followed it by winning by 17 points over SMU, and in their last game, they dominated Tulsa 66-17 on the road in Week 1. Against Tulsa, Oklahoma was just firing on all cylinders. Quarterback Dillon Gabriel threw for 421 yards on 28 for 31 passing. He tossed 5 touchdowns and 1 interception in the game. Gabriel has thrown for 11 touchdowns already, and his lone blemish is that pick. He has completed 82.5% of his passes, as he is averaging just over 300 passing yards per game. Gabriel's best target has been Anrel Anthony, who has caught 14 passes for 254 yards this year. He is averaging 18.1 yards per catch, and he has added a touchdown this season. But the love is shared, as Anthony is one of 4 wide receivers that have already eclipsed 100 yards receiving. The rushing game hasn't been a big focus for Oklahoma through the first 3 games, but Tawee Walker and Jovanti Barnes have been the 2 workhorses for the team. Walker is averaging 5.6 yards per carry, and Barnes is adding 4.4 yards per carry, as the duo has combined for 3 rushing scores this season. Linebacker Danny Stutzman is the leader of the Oklahoma defense. He has 30 total tackles this year, which leads the team. The next closest tackler has just 15. 5 different Sooners have recorded a sack this season. 6 different Sooners have recorded an interception, too. Stutzman is the only one to record a sack and an interception this year. Cincinnati's first game of their Big 12 careers is not one to take lightly, as they meet the ranked Oklahoma Sooners on Saturday, September 23rd. The Bearcats are coming off of a disappointing loss to Miami of Ohio in overtime last week. The offense could not capitalize on drives, and their defense had a hard time slowing down the pass-happy offense of the Redhawks. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, well, that is exactly how Oklahoma wants to play. Led by Gabriel, the Sooners boast one of the best passing attacks in the country. He is completing upwards of 80% of his throws this year, which is just ridiculous. He should find a ton of time behind his great offensive line to pick apart of the Bearcats' defense. Oklahoma's defense is much improved too. If Cincinnati can't get out of their own way via turnovers or 3 and outs, this could be a long night for the Bearcats. Also take the over on Saturday. Cincinnati is 2-1 this season, as they defeated Eastern Kentucky very easily in their Week 1 matchup. They followed it with a 27-21 win on the road versus Pittsburgh in Week 2. In their last game, the Bearcats had a massive letdown, as they were defeated by local rival Miami of Ohio 31-24 in overtime on Saturday, September 16th. The Bearcats were never truly able to control the game against the Red Hawks. Cincinnati's biggest lead for the entire game was just here points, and that came early in the 4th quarter when quarterback Emory Jones rushed in for a 17-yard touchdown to give the Bearcats a 24-21 lead. Miami of Ohio would come down the field and hit a 20-yard field goal to tie the game with about 5 minutes left in the game. Cincinnati would have a chance to win the game via a 35-yard field goal, but it was blocked as time expired. In overtime, Miami of Ohio scored a touchdown on their first drive. Cincinnati needed to answer, but on 4th down, Jones' pass was intercepted to end the game. Jones threw for 265 yards on 18 for 34 passing. He did not throw a touchdown, but he did throw 2 picks in the loss. Jones did add 101 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Ryan Montgomery led the running back room for the Bearcats. He rushed for 104 yards on 20 carries. Montgomery is averaging 4.5 yards per carry, and this game against the Redhawks was his best performance of the year. Corey Kiner was stymied against Miami of Ohio as he rushed for just 31 yards, but he did score a touchdown. Kiner leads the team in rushing yards with 289, and he has added 2 touchdowns this season. These are two teams that love to run up the score when given the chance. The over is 5-1 this season between the two teams, and I think the over is going to hit in this game, too. The Bearcats' offense has big play capabilities, but I am leaning on Oklahoma's efficiency to lead the way in hitting the over. Their offense has just looked like a machine through the first couple of games, and I think that will continue on Saturday. Kentucky versus Vanderbilt. Take Kentucky Wildcats minus 13.5 points. Kentucky enters this game 3-0 on the season, with all 3 of their wins coming at home against non-SEC opponents. In their most recent 35-3 win against Akron, the team totaled 450 yards and 35 points while holding the Zips to just a field goal. Devin Leary threw for 315 yards with 3 touchdowns and an interception, while the Wildcats had 3 different receivers total over 85 yards. Running back Ray Davis led the backs with 7 carries for 72 yards and a touchdown, but it is worth noting that Demaisumo Karnbe had 4 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown himself. The defense held Akron to just under 250 yards and a field goal, forcing only 1 turnover as the Zips simply couldn't move the sticks. Overall, it was a solid win for the Wildcats, as most expected them to take care of business against the struggling Akron team. The Wildcats are 2-touchdown favorites for their first road game and SEC game of the season against Vanderbilt. This should be a relatively low-scoring game overall, so the offense for Kentucky will be crucial for their success in this game. The offense has looked good the first 3 games rushing and throwing the ball efficiently, so as long as they can continue to spread the ball out and attack both ways, they should be pretty set against Vandy. On the defensive end, they need their defensive line to continue pressuring the quarterback. Getting a lead early on will help with this, but they need to keep Vandy behind the sticks so they can build that lead. The secondary will have to play tight and man coverage for the pass rush to develop. As long as Kentucky doesn't play down to their opponent, they should walk out of Nashville with a win. I'm leaning towards Kentucky covering the spread in this game for several reasons. Firstly, it's a revenge game for them after Vanderbilt surprised them with a win on the road last season. In terms of overall team quality, Kentucky is significantly stronger. Vanderbilt's recent performance in their loss against UNLV was less than impressive. The key difference in this matchup is expected to be in the trenches. Vanderbilt has struggled to maintain a strong offensive line, which has resulted in difficulties running the ball and executing effective downfield passes. This vulnerability is likely to be exploited by Kentucky's defense, which has demonstrated a robust defensive front capable of slowing down the run and putting pressure on the quarterback. This could lead to Vanderbilt's struggles in moving the ball downfield and capitalizing in the red zone. Conversely, Vanderbilt's defense recently allowed 40 points to UNLV, while Kentucky's offense is more versatile and capable of attacking both on the ground and through the air. They should have no trouble moving the ball in this game and could potentially accumulate a high team score. Considering the current trends, Kentucky has a 2-1 record against the spread this season, whereas Vanderbilt is 0-4 against the spread. Taking all these factors into account, it appears to be a reasonable choice to have confidence in Kentucky covering the spread. Take under 51 points. Vanderbilt enters this game with a 2-2 record on the season and has lost their past 2 games against Wake Forest and UNLV. In their most recent 40-37 loss against UNLV, the Commodores were sent home after a late field goal with 5 seconds left in the game. Vanderbilt totaled just over 400 yards in the game, with their quarterback A.J. Swan throwing for 335 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick. London Humphreys led the receivers with 102 yards and a touchdown, but they also had 2 other wideouts put up at least 80 yards in the loss. The run game struggled, totaling only 83 yards in the game, where Patrick Smith had 13 carries for only 43 yards and Swan had 27 rushing yards himself. Besides rushing, the defense obviously struggled, allowing 40 points to UNLV. They allowed about 400 total yards and were not able to keep the Rebels out of the end zone when in the red zone. Overall, it was a tough loss for Vandy as they looked sloppy on the road against a subpar opponent. The Commodores are 2-touchdown underdogs for their first SEC game at home against Kentucky. Vandy will have their hands full this game, but it starts in the trenches. If the offensive line can hold off the pressure from Kentucky's defensive front and allow for the offense to establish the run game, it will go a long way in this game. Vanderbilt can throw the ball, but if they are constantly playing from behind and lacking a run game, they won't stand a chance. The defense will have to make a pretty big turnaround after last week, where they allowed 40 points to UNLV. They can't afford to have another performance like that, especially against SEC opponents, so the defense will have to find a way to get off the field and hold Kentucky to field goals in the red zone. The turnover margin will also have a significant impact on this game. The Commodores fumbled the ball 5 times last week and have to do a better job of controlling the rock. Giving this Wildcats offense extra possessions will not bode well in the long run. Taking the under in this game for a couple of reasons. The line opened up at 51 and has since moved down to 50.5 across some books, indicating sharp action on the under. While I do expect Kentucky's offense to have its way this game, I do not see this game going over 51 total points. Vanderbilt's lack of a run game is very concerning. If they cannot move the ball against Kentucky's defense front, we will see a lot of 3-and-outs and not much scoring from them. Kentucky will move the ball pretty well, but I do expect Vanderbilt's defense to play better than they did against UNLV, as they were forced into plus territory because of turnovers. I see this game going just under 50 total points, with a final score of Kentucky in the low 30s and Vandy in the mid to high 10s. In terms of trends, Kentucky has gone under in their past 2 games, and when these teams have faced off in the past, they have gone under in 7 of their past 10 matchups overall. For these reasons, I am confident in taking the under for this game.